So, good morning. We are on Lamed Aleph Amud Beis 34b. We are discussing the spies who sabotaged the Jewish people's originally planned entrance into the land of Israel and delaying it by 40 years. And that they were sent by Moshe Rabbeinu, as we learned, to scout the land, to inform the people of the best way to enter. And they came back with the opinion that they were asked to report on, which was that we should not go in. Such massive fruit, people are too big, not worth going in there. They made that mistake. And yesterday what we learned was that it was their attitude to begin with. Before they even went, they went with the intention of finding the negative and therefore came back with a negative report. And we also learned that it's indicated in their names. And the mission to declare that we know by tradition that all their names are associated with this bad choice. But the Gemara only cited 4 such names as a sample. Or that was, as the Gemara says, Ola b'yadenu, this is what we came up with for 4. And now, the Gemara is now going to compare that with the 2 spies who came back with a positive report, the 2 that stayed away from the Meraglim's thinking. And we're going to discover today the strength where they drew their strength to be able to stay away from this kind of negative influence.
Can't blame the people. We're not wanting to go in.
Yeah.
We either had a life of everything's given to them.
Yeah. We all like to think that if we were to put ourselves back in history, we would be the lone voice that's the voice of reason and right and true. Statistically speaking, we would have been wrong also. And what's the proof? Statistically speaking, we would have been wrong also? Because they were all wrong. Why would we be the anomaly? Right? Statistically speaking, we would be in the majority. Yeah. Anyway.
Why should I be the one to go in there and fight wars and toil and grind?
Yeah, there's plenty of reason to want to stay in the desert.
And pray, and
they also knew that going into the desert, going into the land of Israel means they lost Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
There's lots of reason to want to stay behind.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what Kalev and Yehoshua did that gave them the ability to withstand the tests of the spy's mistake in saying it's better we stay in the desert.
Surprised the other 8 didn't threaten them.
Okay, so let's see. And we're going to see that essentially both of them draw their strength from the TZADDIK. From the TZADDIK who's plugged in to Hashem directly. And when a Jew connects themselves to the TZADDIK, that awakens within them their own connection to Hashem, and therefore they have the strength. Like when we as Jews connect to a TZADDIK, that TZADDIK brings out within us our connection to Hashem that allows us to overcome the challenges. And that's what we're going to see today from Kalev and Yehoshua. So let's see the Gemara. Gemara quotes the verse which says, describing the journey of the spies. Ayalu Negev, they went up in the Negev. Vayavayat Chevron, and he arrived at Chevron. That's what it says in the singular. He arrived at Chevron. So the Gemara comments, it should have said they came up to Chevron. Why he came up to Chevron in the singular? So Amar Rava indicates, Rava derives, we must conclude that it was one of the spies who left the pack and went to Chevron. And therefore it's in the singular. Now who would that be? It must be Kalev, as we're going to see soon. Later, the Torah says that because Kalev, and the Gemara is going to quote this soon, because Kalev had a different spirit than the rest of the spies, therefore he's being granted Chevron as his inheritance. which means if he's being granted Hebron because of his strength, therefore must be that when the verse says he went to Hebron in the singular, not in the plural, it must be that it's he, Kalev, the one who later got Hebron as a result of his going to Hebron and staying away from the spies' intended error.
What does that mean? He got it as an inheritance. Is he buried there?
No, that became his portion of land.
Oh,
When they divvied up the land, he got Hebron. Yeah. Kalev was given Hebron.
apart from the tribe he belongs to?
It was within the tribe he belonged to, but then the tribe family was also split up.
It's within the tribe he belongs
Yeah,
to?
yeah.
But he specifically got that.
He specifically got Hebron as a special thank you for not following for the tribe's trap. And therefore, we can conclude that when the verse says that he in the singular went up to Hebron, meaning there's one person who left the pack to go to Hebron, we can deduce that it was him. Okay, so why would he go to Hebron? It says the Gemara like this. Amar Rava teaches us the fact that the verse says, and he went to Hebron in the singular, not they. This indicates Shapirish Kalev Ma'atzas Meraglim. Kalev separated himself from the scheme of the rest of the spies. Where did he go? He needs to go somewhere to get strength. He needs to get somewhere to get strength, to not fall for the trap, to not fall for the spies' thinking, to maintain his faith that Hashem has a plan and that Hashem is committed to us going to the land of Israel and that we're ultimately dedicated to his purpose and not to our own desires. Even if our desires are spiritual in nature, we're not dedicated to our spiritual desires, we're dedicated to Hashem. So the spies can have all kinds of fancy language to say, look, the right thing is to stay in the desert because Israel is too difficult because the desert is more spiritually comfortable. And later when we get to the Gemara, where the Gemara describes what the words the spies said to describe why they didn't want to go to Eretz Yisrael, I'll share something the Rabbi had to say about that, which is beautiful. But the first Kalev needs to get the strength to withstand all this. So where did he go to Hebron? Why Hebron? Because he went to Nishtateach. And Nishtateach means he prostrated himself. He went to pray Al Kivrei Avos at the gravesite of our forefathers. Our forefathers are buried in Hebron. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and their wives, except for Rachel, who's buried in Beis Lechem. But the rest of them are all buried in Hebron.
It's interesting. He prayed for not to be that it'll be a successful mission. He prayed to be spared from the spies.
That's a very interesting point. Let's read it first. Let's first read it. Let's read. That's a good point.
What we don't understand is he went from.
They were all traveling through the land of Israel. He separated and went to Hebron.
Far?
It's in Israel.
Yeah, it's far.
Yeah, it's far.
Far from the Dead Sea.
Yeah. He went to Hebron. And he needs to get strength from our forefathers. From Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are buried there, and Sarah, Rivka, and Leah. Rachel's buried at Beis Lechem. And he said, Amar Lahen, he told them, who's the them that he's speaking to? Who's Kalev speaking to? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He's speaking to them, and he says, Avoisai, my fathers, speaking to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Bikshu alai rachamim. Please intercede on my behalf, talk to God, and awaken upon me mercy. That I should be spared from the scheme of the spies, which is a good point, Robert, that he asks to be spared from the scheme of the spies rather than asking that the spies' mind be changed. Perhaps the reason is because people have free choice. Which I shouldn't say that because I don't know if you remember, we discussed. But you weren't here Thursday night. Once discussed. It's on line somewhere on our YouTube channel. We discussed the halacha around praying for someone else to do teshuvah, whether that's an appropriate prayer, and we discussed that. So maybe he gets into that, but we'll put that aside. But it is interesting that he says, "I want to be saved from the spies, from the scheme of the spies." Anyway,
So
good point.
Back to
something to think about. Sorry.
He never went back across the Jordan to.
Sure, he didn't stay in Hebron. He came back. He came back to the desert, certainly. But on the trip in Israel, he took a detour, went to Hebron, prayed there, and then went back. He went back to the desert, certainly.
It's a far walk.
Yeah, or he hopped on a camel. He said he walked. Maybe he hopped on a camel. On a donkey, I don't know. It doesn't say he has to have walked,
But also there's something interesting in the word. I don't know if the Hebrew word is scheme,
Scheme is atzas,
yeah, so.
which is eitzah, which means like advice.
They had a scheme. They had some sort of, which it's not clear what that scheme was. I'm just
Well, the Gemara told us yesterday that to begin with, they had the intention we're going to find something negative. So in other words, they decided with the preconceived notion, we're not going to Israel because we want to stay in the desert. Like Chassidus explains, the reason why they had that preconceived notion is because they want to stay in the spiritual cocoon of the desert rather than working the land. So even before they went, they were looking to find ways that would demonstrate to the people it's too difficult, it's not worth the challenge.
Yeah.
So whatever they can find, they'll do it. They didn't know what they were going to find negative, but they were looking for negative. And when you look for negative, you find it.
It seems more like there was something more specific that he knew.
We learned yesterday, they looked for the embarrassment of the land. What that embarrassment would be, they didn't know until they got there, but that's what they were looking for. They were looking for the negative, they can come back. In other words, the preconceived idea was they want to stay in the desert. And the scheme is to go, the word in Hebrew, I keep on translating as scheme. The word in Hebrew is atzas, which means advice, or thinking, the advice, the modality, the plan.
Yeah.
Use the word scheme. Okay, so here's something interesting. And this Gemara serves as a very strong source for this idea of going to the gravesite of a tzaddik, and specifically communicating to the tzaddik that's there. As he says here, he spoke to our forefathers, to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and says, please speak to God on my behalf. So when it comes to visiting the grave of a tzaddik, there's lots of controversy around it, dating back to the times of the Rambam. And also on YouTube somewhere, I did a class on this. I collected all the sources for and against. And there are those who discourage going to gravesites. All, like Rambam. There are those that say you go to a gravesite to talk to Hashem, that on the merit of the holy tzaddik that's here, my prayers be answered. And then there is the more direct way to go to a tzaddik, as described here. Talk to the tzaddik and say, please intercede on my behalf. And this is the strong, there are other sources, and again, watch the video, I collect all the sources there, from the Gemara, from the Rishonim, from Achronim. And but here's the strongest indication of Kalev speaking directly to a tzaddik that's lying in the grave right there of Yitzchak and Yaakov. How is that possible? How is this allowed? To speak to the dead, especially considering that the halacha is, if you were to meet an angel, you couldn't ask the angel, please talk to God for me. Because that's insulting. You can talk to Hashem directly. What are you asking the angel for? But yet, when it comes to another Jew, we do pray for each other. Not only that, the Gemara says, someone who prays for his fellow, Hashem will answer him first. That is to say, there's a value in praying for someone else. Right? Sorry?
That was an excellent way to speak to the Rebbe. Please speak to God on my behalf.
Yeah.
I'm just marking down.
That's the opening line a person writes to a Rebbe. Please speak on my behalf. So why is it that we're asking the tzaddik to speak on our behalf? Why can't we speak directly to Hashem? We see Kalev is doing it. And it seems from the Gemara's context that if Kalev didn't go there, he wouldn't have had the strength. He might have fallen for them. He had to go to the tzaddikim at the grave to get the strength and speak to them and say, please talk to Hashem to give me the strength. So why do I need a tzaddik to do that?
You have to have the confidence
So
to know that it's a good chance it's going to go through.
You speak to a tzaddik, you can be confident it's going to be good. So what's the story here? How to explain this? So again, I encourage you to watch that video. You get more elaboration on this with various sources, but just to briefly, 2 points.
Is there a link?
You can search my name and gravesite of tzaddik, it'll show up. Yeah. It's on the MTC YouTube channel. So essentially, there's 2 points to understand. On the subject of talking to Hashem and having another Jew speak on my behalf, and why that's okay, even though asking an angel is forbidden. Yeah, notwithstanding the fact that there's the prayer Machli Serachim, and that's also discussed by various different commentaries. from Yisraelim. So it goes something like this. All the Jewish people are not separate entities. We are in essence one being. We're one being divided by our bodies. We're learning this on Shabbos afternoon. At the core, all Jews are one great spiritual body. So one Jew praying on behalf of another Jew is not an intermediary. It's like the mouth talking to the doctor on behalf of my foot. So I go to the doctor and I tell the doctor my foot's hurting. Is my mouth an intermediary to speak on behalf of my foot? It's the same me speaking. In fact, the foot's better off if the mouth speaks on his behalf, because the feet does not have that communication. So when a tzaddik speaks to Hashem on your behalf, it's not some other entity being an intermediary, God forbid. It's an extension of me speaking.
The whole court case for the library.
That's right.
Based on that idea.
That's right.
It's a very good
And the Jewish people and the tzaddik, the king, the nasi, referred to as the Lev called Yisrael, the heart of the Jewish people, sometimes referred to as the mind, sometimes referred to as Einei Ha'eda, the eyes of the people, not a separate entity. So it's like the Yerushalmi says, like it's two hands of one body. Is one hand going to go and chop off the other hand because it's a mad? And then if it's angry, he'll chop back. Oh, I'm angry. The right hand is angry at the left hand for doing something, so it's going to chop off a finger. So it's one being. So a tzaddik speaking to Hashem on my behalf is not an intermediary, God forbid. It's an extension of me. Which leads to the next point, which is that it's a better version of me. The best version of a finger is if it's connected to the body and connected to the head and connected to the heart. So the best version of a Jew and the best version of a Jew's connection to Hashem is when he's connected to a tzaddik. Not because the tzaddik's an intermediary, but because the tzaddik, being the heart of the Jewish people, can awaken in you your connection to Hashem. In the same way that pumping heart gives life of the finger. So the heart of the Jewish people, the tzaddik, gives that life to every Jew. And that your connection to Hashem is more revealed. And therefore, Yeshua, Kalev, if he needs strength to live as a Jew and stay connected to Hashem, he's got to go to the tzaddik. He has to go to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He has to go to those people who are translucent connections to Hashem, and that can awaken in Kalev the strength and connection he has to Hashem. And then he can withstand all this depression.
That's amazing what you just said.
So I encourage you to watch that video. I have more elaboration with more sources and so on. Okay, so this is Kalev. Kalev went to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, getting strength from those tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael. They're buried there. Yehoshua. How did Yeshua have the strength to withstand the test of the spies?
Moshe.
We'll see a second. We'll learn in a second. So Kalev, the Gemara told us, was a singular individual who veered off the path from the group and went on his own to Hebron, as the verse indicates, and he arrived at Hebron in the singular, which means Yeshua didn't go with Kalev, and yet he still withstood. So what did he do? It says the Gemara, Moshe already spoke to God on his behalf. Shenemar, as the verse reads, Moshe called Hoshea bin Nun, to Hoshea son of Nun. He called him, changed his name to Yehoshua, adding the Yud before the Hey. And the Yud before the Hey turns the Hoshea into Yeshiacha. Yah being Hashem's name, Ka. I shouldn't say Yud Hey. Hashem should save you, Matzas Meraglim, from the scheme of the spies. So we have again this idea of the name. Remember, yesterday we were talking about these four names that indicated negative. And I pointed out that the names themselves are negative, but it was used in the negative. The same thing is true of Hoshea. Hoshea just means salvation. Salvation from whom? Salvation from what? It could be positive, it could be negative. But with Yeshua being connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, Yeshua being connected to the tzaddik, Moshe Rabbeinu reveals in him, Hashem should save you. That all of his name, all of his personality should be used in a godly fashion. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu does for him. Adding or revealing the essence of Hashem within his name. And this is also connected to our forefathers. As we know, the Yud of Sarai, Sarah's name, Avram's wife Sarah, she was Sarai, and her name was changed to Sarah. And the Yud was given to Yehoshua. So again, this connection to our forefathers, who Kalev went to speak to. Now, because it is Kalev that veered off the path and went to speak to our forefathers that they should intercede on his behalf to give him that strength. This then is the meaning of the verse, which says, "Ma'avdi Kalev, my servant Kalev, considering that he had another spirit, he had this strength to leave and go to the tzaddik to get that strength to not fall for the trap." And the verse goes on to say, therefore, Hashem is going to bring him to the land that he came there. It's going to be an inheritance for him. And then later in the book of Yeshua, Rashi tells us, it says that land that's referred to in Bamidbar is Hebron, indicating that Kalev is the one that went to Hebron. Okay.
Forefathers are all buried together.
Yeah.
Okay. For a reason, I guess, that people can come and
Pray.
Yeah. And bless them, of course, and ask them for favors, or ask them to ask God for favors.
Yeah.
So why didn't they do the same thing? Why didn't God do the same for Moshe?
Why was Moshe's burial not known?
Yeah.
There's a number of different reasons for that. Different reasons. One of them is because no one would ever enter the land of Israel. They would just stay around Moshe Rabbeinu's kever and just draw energy from him. One reason. Another reason is, there's many reasons given. Another reason given is that Hashem was, so to speak, worried that his tombstone would be turned into a deity.
Yeah.
It's another reason.
Same with them.
Yeah. It is a little mysterious, the fact that Hashem decided that Moshe Rabbeinu's grace should not be known.
He was on a level higher than them, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of ways of understanding that verse, but it's a question. Yeah, I suppose. We have a lot of questions from Mashiach. We'll add that to the list. Okay, now a few more lines. How much time is it? Okay, a few more lines to the Gemara. The Gemara then continues to quote the verse, which says that when he went up to Hebron, which we just discovered that he is Kalev. So the verse goes on to say that he met there certain people. And then the verse goes on to describe Hebron's history. So first the Gemara is going to comment on the people that Kalev meets in Hebron. And then tomorrow we'll look at the Gemara's commentary on the history of Hebron, when it was built, how long it was built for, and who built it. That we'll get to. So first today, we'll continue with the commentary on the names of the people that Kalev met. Again, we're talking about names here. The incredible, it's all related to like the names. The name of Yeshua being changed from Hoshea to Yehoshua, the names of the spies that are negative, or at least were used in the negative, and now the names of the people that Yeshua meets, and the floor is open to interpret what this might mean. But first, let's learn the Gemara on a literal level. So the verse says, V'sham, and there in Hebron, he met, or there are there, Achiman, Sheshai, Talmai, etc. The verse says, the children of the Anak. That's what the verse goes on to say. We'll discuss in a moment. So we could say that Anak is just a name. Children of the Anak. And Anak also means the large one, the massive one. We'll see. The Gemara says like this. Achiman, the three people that were there, his name is Achiman. That name Achiman comes from the word miyuman, the righted one, the right-handed one. Right hand indicating strength. For most people, the right hand is stronger than the left. So right indicates strength. Miyuman Shebechov, he's the strongest amongst his brothers. Between Achiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, Achiman was the strongest. And that's why he was called Achiman, the right-handed, because he was like the right hand being stronger than the left, he was right hand, he was stronger than his brothers. The second of the three people there, his name is Sheshai. That name Sheshai comes from the word Shemesim, that he places. What does he place? Shemesim, comes from the next, Shemesim Mr. Aretz, Ki Shichais. He makes the ground like, Shichais means like ditches, I think, right? makes the land like ditches. As he walks, he's so big that he makes ditches in the ground. Yeah. And the word Sheshai, Rashi says, I'm not sure how Sheshai gets to making ditches, but nonetheless, it could be it comes. Well, no, how does it come the word Sheshai? How does the word Sheshai get to the word ditches? It just so happens to be that the word ditches has the shin also, but it's one shin, not two shins. So Rashi says, I don't know. I didn't get an explanation as to how the word Sheshai gets to making ditches. It would seem to me it comes from the word Sheshai also comes from the word shesh, which is like strong pillars, which are very strong. Right. So Rashi says, I'm not sure how shesh gets to shechatot. Oh. But he says, nonetheless, maybe it comes from the word, he says, maybe the word sheshai comes from the word shesh, which is like strong pillars that are very heavy that make ditches in the ground. Anyway, and thirdly, the third brother, Talmai, is called Talmai because Shemesh Misaoretz Tlamim Tlamim. As he walks, he makes the ground into furrows. And the word furrows is the same word, is the word Talamim, which is the exact same word as Talmai, the name of the third brother.
It says here, due to his weight.
Yeah.
That's why there.
Yeah, but the name, we're talking about the name, the point of the names. How does their Hebrew name get to the meaning that they're describing?
Doesn't have to do with the weight.
You're mixing up two things. The fact that he makes furrow on the ground is because of his weight. The question is, how is that indicated in his name? The name, right?
Weight has nothing to do with the name?
No. That's the point, right? So the name indicates what they do to the ground when they walk. Either make ditches or furrows. And the name has to somehow indicate furrows or ditches. So Talmai is easy. Talmai is the same word as furrows, which is telamim. Singular telam. Whereas sheshai is a little more difficult to get from the word sheshai to ditches. So that's what Rashi says. The word sheshai could be a reference to a pillar, heavy pillar, which makes ditches in the ground.
Are these part of the giants?
Yes. Yes.
Part of the what? Sorry?
Yes.
Giants.
Yes. Gilead. The next word in the verse is Yelid ha'anak, children of the anak. Anak, as we'll see in a minute, could be huge. Anak means massive, as we'll see in a minute. Okay, Dover Acher, another reading to who these people are, says the Gemara. Achiman, the first of the three brothers named Achiman, Bana Anas. He built a city called Anas. Sheshai, the second of the three brothers, Bana Alash, built a place called Alash. Talmai, the third brother, Bana Talbush, made a place called Talbush. So I'm not sure why these two interpretations are mutually exclusive. The Gemara presents them as if like there's two options. One is that the names indicate their strength, Achiman being the right hand, the stronger of the three, Sheshai making ditches, and Talmai making furrows when he walks. Another reading is that the three brothers made three different cities. Or these three people made three different cities. I'm not sure why there are two different versions. Why aren't they just two elements about them? And also, how did the names link us to what cities they built? Number two. And number three, how do we even know which cities they built? Like, where does this come from? Like, where's the verse indication? And Rashi leaves us with no commentary. So,
who are they? I mean,
I don't.
what's their relationship
To these cities, and like, why is it coming up here?
Jews?
Okay, one second. These are the three people the verse says were in Hebron when Kalev got there.
Right, we don't know who they are.
So we're trying to deduce from their name who they are. So we're deducing from their name in the first version that they were huge people. That's the first thing we're deducing.
Yeah.
But the second half, the second version, well, what are we deducing? That they built these three cities. First of all, how do you deduce that from the verse? Number one. Number two, what's the relevance? That they built these cities. I guess the fact that they built cities indicates that they're men of power. Okay, they built cities, very powerful people. Get that? But how do we deduce that from their names or from the verse? I'm not really sure. I'm a little perplexed about this line. I don't know. Sure, there's commentary, but I'm leaving it open. Anything there? Just states the fact.
Built cities.
Yeah.
Their name.
I guess it just indicates their power. That they built cities.
There's a background.
Sorry, yeah.
There was some background. You want to read it?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Anak, Alush, and Talush. The locations of these cities are unknown.
Okay.
They were apparently located in Eretz Israel or nearby. It's possible that the city of Alush, that is mentioned here, is a place with the same name that is mentioned among the tribes of the Jewish people in the wilderness. That's in Numbers 36.
Okay, so the commentary there is just basically on trying to ascertain the location of these places. But it doesn't really help us on how we got from the verses to the fact that these cities were built by them.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know. Just
There were apparently large stones in these places, possibly dolmens.
That's what?
Possibly dolmens, I don't know what that is.
Okay, a certain kind of mineral, I
That
suppose.
looked like they had been assembled by giants. Like they found these huge boulders that were not naturally placed. Apparently they were in an
Okay.
arrangement of some sort.
So if these guys are giants, the cities must have been huge.
Yeah. So let's see.
As tall as the
Yes, let's see. This is the Gemara's final comment. The Gemara says, Yelida Anak, that these three were the children of the Anak. So says the Gemara, what does it mean that they were children of Anak? It doesn't mean their father's name is Anak, although you could in theory read the verse that way. But it means actually a description of who they are. It's that they stand so tall that it looks like the sun is like a necklace to them. And the word Anak is a description of a necklace, and that you have a hole in like a pearl and you string something through it. That word Anak is related to that activity. So it looked like the sun was like pearls hanging on their necks. That's how big they were. And commentary on these three people. There's certainly more to be uncovered here. I'm just putting down what the Gemara says. The floor is open. Okay, Yidden. Wonderful day. Tomorrow, God willing, we get into the history of Hebron, how it was built, who it was built, why it was built. Okay, have a good day, Yidden.